Nice. Beautiful.
How's it going?
Hey, good, Evan. Yeah, yeah. And thanks for sending me a copy. You're
Yes,
my buddy.
absolutely.
How's your young puppy doing? Your young dad? How's he doing?
He's good. He's doing all right. He's 6.5 months old, so he's going to be 7 months here actually in a week and a half or 2 weeks. So he's growing a little too fast for our liking, but he's growing. So
that's awesome. That is so cool. So cool. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us again.
My pleasure. How's that young Brad doing?
Still growing.
Yeah, still growing.
Getting old a little too fast, just like Evan's son Bennett, but doing well otherwise. Healthy and doing well.
Good. That's great, guys. Yeah.
How's everybody on your end, Wally?
Everybody's good. Everybody's good. Yeah, working away. And our youngest daughter, Emma, is her and her hubby and her two of our grandkids are packing up and heading to Edmonton. You know,
really?
It's such a good move. He can work anywhere. He's a programmer. And they couldn't afford to buy a house in Squamish. They couldn't afford to buy a house in the Lower Mainland. So they said, well, it's either Edmonton or Ottawa.
Wow.
So they headed to Edmonton. Yeah.
Good.
That's our new news.
That's pretty common. A lot of people bailing out of the Lower Mainland just based on the expense. And for young people especially, very, very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And, Jenny and I have been looking for, on the water homes on the island. And I think we told you we're renting here in White Rock, which is perfect. We're just going to wait it out.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty convinced now that we have a little piece of property in East Souk. And I think we're just going to really focus on building there.
Nice. And you said pretty well versed in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're excited about that. And, we'll just make that happen and hope that the marina goes in. The guys, promised to put a marina in.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the goal. And so that'll happen over the next 2 years. No hurry. No hurries. So we're trying to, turn our business around and write the book and, keep moving on that front. So it really focuses me. We don't have to look anymore. We just build in the future. So
you've never been one to let a lot of grass grow under your feet, eh, Wally?
Yeah. I'm like you guys. I keep moving. We keep growing. So
that's right.
Now, Evan, what about those Leafs? What's going on, buddy?
With the Leafs? Well, the funny thing that you mention it, because I was going to actually start this off by prompting you with the question of the mentality in a dressing room, because you've been in a dressing room. Mentality in a dressing room when a game or a series is tied and you've either blown a lead or you've come back. Yeah. The mentality of, one versus the other. You've blown a lead versus you've come back, and what that does in a dressing room, leadership-wise and all that stuff.
It's really an interesting question. I think I've been on both sides of that. So obviously momentum is such a key component. You look at game 7, Toronto obviously coming off the loss. I think there's such a swing in the playoffs of energy and momentum. You go from feeling so excited, you're up by a game, and then you're up by 2 games. And then you're starting to lose it. You lose a game and it's like you're done. And I think what's happened in Toronto and in Edmonton is there's it's interesting. As you sort of read scripture, you look at faith and you look at fear. And a lot of people live their life through, oh no, right? I'm losing it. There's this fear factor, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's normal. And I think the one thing that I'm watching, and you guys are too, in life, can we learn how to lose? That's an interesting thought. You know, you look at Toronto, and I say that carefully, and then you look at Edmonton, and it's almost like it's the mindset. You know, they're a good team. Both are brilliant teams, and they're you know, hopefully they're going to take the next step. But so far in their evolution, they've found ways to lose. And so the question is, and I love your question, you know, you're in the dressing room, you're losing that momentum. What have you trained your brain to do at that point? Do you follow the negative momentum and go like the press goes and like the fans go, here we go again?
Yeah.
Or do you have the strength of character in the dressing room, probably coming from older leaders that have been through it, that can say, no, 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 one shift, one period, one game, right? You chunk it down, and you know and you put your best foot on, you know, best game on the ice, you know, shift by shift. So uh, I've been where Evan, great question. I've been where I've lost the momentum. Our team has lost the momentum. And you look back, you know, when we lost against Calgary, so we were up 2-1 against the Flames in '86. And all we had to do was win game 4, right? We're up 3-1. We're going to win the series. We lost game 4. Say now you're in game 5 and they've got the momentum and we lose game 5. And now you're in game 6 and they're starting to close it out. Now we did the same thing to Calgary in '86. We turned that corner, right? And we had momentum. We just kept moving. So yeah, it's a fascinating question, and I think that, you know, the three of us, I think, are probably pretty concerned for the Leaf dressing room right now and the Oiler dressing room right now. And then the question, I'd be interested to get your guys' ideas, is if you're in management in both those organizations, you can't panic because everybody's waiting to get your top players, right? And they want it for a fire sale.
Yeah.
So you can't panic, and yet you have to do something.
Yeah.
So Brad, you're the GM of the Oilers. What are you going to do, buddy?
Man, a little salary cap hocus pocus for one thing. But there have to be, as you know, because you were one of those guys in demand as a leader and as a locker room presence, as a veteran, you were one of those guys that even to the end of your career, you were in demand. There's got to be some Ryan Walter presence out there to change that mentality from, oh no, here we go again, to, oh no, this is not happening. I am not letting this get away. This is not how we're going to do it. I don't care what the press says. I don't care what social media says. It is not going to happen. And it's just that will and stubbornness and things like that. But there's you certainly, in the case of Edmonton, if you're the GM there, you can't go out and pay for much because you're cap strapped. But you've got to have that, and who knows where it comes from. That what we always called chemistry is such an elusive thing that I guess you just have to wish that there was still one of the Sutter brothers available or something like that, because that's a name that comes to mind when a dressing room needs some glue in it.
Well, the topic of this was brought up before we started recording, just because, you know, me being an Avalanche fan, they're up 2-0 against Vegas.
Yep.
And now it's 2-2.
Yep.
So now it's, you know, what's their dressing room like? Is Landeskog your true leader? Is Bednar, you know, a bench boss? Is, you know, what's going to happen? Or does this series get away from him? So Edmonton's thing is, though, and we've talked about it before, Edmonton's thing, though, is a little more complicated than Toronto's, just because, and it's nothing against the young guys that Edmonton has, but they don't have anybody that can go with McDavid. So McDavid can score 100 points every year like he does, and that's great. But come playoff time, playoffs are a whole different animal, and they key in on Draisaitl and McDavid, and when those two guys get shut down, Edmonton can't win hockey games. So you need proper depth around McDavid and Draisaitl, and right now Edmonton doesn't have it. That's different than Toronto. Toronto's got the skill, they've got the depth. You could argue they lack consistency, they lack proper leadership, they lack size and aggressiveness, whatever, but they're, at least for Toronto, they're in a little bit of a different boat than Edmonton.
That's a good point.
So you talked about faith and that mentality of what do we do now early on, and I remember back in the early '80s that you experienced all the way through. I remember the 83, 82, 83, 84 Oilers talking about getting beaten by the Islanders, and they all said we really had to learn how to lose.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with Max Lucado, the author?
Yeah.
I just heard him say, or read just a few days ago, that as his kids were graduating, and I heard the same thing from Denzel Washington giving a commencement address at Fordham University. They said, I wish you failure.
Yeah.
Which really came out weird, but when you stop and think about it, how much stronger do you get when you get whatever you want?
Yeah.
And how much stronger do you get when you have to spend extra summers in the gym and extra time in physio and extra, like you've been there, it, you've been to the top, that nothing makes you stronger than adversity.
Yep. It's true.
So wishing your graduate or your young son or daughter failure as they go out into the world is an uncommon thing for a parent or a mentor to say, but it makes sense, eh?
Totally.
And I guess that's where what you were saying earlier about whether these teams, whether the nucleus of leadership in those dressing rooms, whether they look at this and say, we're going to get this done, and it's a matter of will. Yep. Or, oh my gosh, it's the fear or faith idea, and it's a matter of will.
Yep.
When way back when, and Evan can tell you this story too, but when I had our high school team watching a documentary video on one of the Navy SEAL classes, what they put those kids through.
Yep.
And the guys that came through, and the success rate was about, 12% or something. The washout rate was in the high 80s. The guys that made it were not the biggest and strongest. They weren't the guys who could bench press and everything else more than anybody else. They were the guys with the strongest will.
Yes.
And that's all. And 100% of them were the guys who said, I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do to me. You can't beat me. You can't make me quit. And that's probably where that winner mentality comes from after you've been slapped around a little bit, eh?
Yeah, you're right. Totally right. Are you going to start us off, Evan, or do you want me to jump in on that?
You jump in. We're kind of already rolling, so you jump in.
Hey, awesome.
We kind of want to get moving on it before we get cut off like last time. So
yeah, no problem. That's awesome.
Unfortunately,
but I love where you guys are going. I mean, I think that's the topic on the minds of most people. When the game's on the line, you want to be the player that makes it happen. Now, I get it's a good point that Gretzky had some room because Messier was the second centerman. So,
Yeah.
you know, if Gretzky doesn't score, then if you take him away, and that's the thing in the playoffs is there's no holds barred. The coaching staff. I've been on a team before where my job was just to follow Gretz around the ice and make sure he got no points.
Yeah.
So if you do that successfully and the other guy scores, now you're in trouble because it's not going to happen. But that's what Winnipeg did, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
to the two big boys. You take that away, and you can win the game. The other thing that's interesting to watch now is in those series, both goaltenders, Winnipeg and Montreal, uh, they won the series. I don't think the other two goaltenders necessarily lost the series. They were okay, but they didn't win the series. And right now you're seeing, Carey Price is in that mode where, when in '86, in the '80s, when Patrick, sorry about that, when Patrick Waugh, there we go, when Patrick Waugh was in that mode, I mean, you just won games. So you put that on the table too.
Yeah.
But the dressing room, like how do you shift that now when you've got a whole summer to think about it? Is really the stuff for for fodder. For the three of us are fans, we can talk about it. But then if you're the GMs of those two teams, what do you do now?
Right.
You got a lot of
And
decisions to make if you're both those teams. Just simply this offseason, we've talked about it ourselves, of the expansion draft. So now you have Seattle coming in, and now you've got to navigate not only what do you do with your organization to set yourself up for success next season, but how do you navigate that while also making the best decision along those lines in who you expose for Seattle? So, and with the flat salary cap, there's a lot of interesting decisions that every team, but especially the teams that either didn't make the playoffs or failed out of the playoffs, are facing.
So Ryan, that's a great question, and I want to kind of flip that back on you. You've been in the front office, you've been in the dressing room, you've been on the ice for your whole life. I know now we live in an era of more salary cap issues and analytics and things like that. But when you're looking for that solution and you're saying, what is that chemistry, that Ryan Walter, that Sutter brother, what is it we're looking for? What do we need in here? How do you go about that? Do you get your player development staff together? Do you have your leadership nucleus in the dressing room? Where does a guy turn to say, I know we have to do something, don't panic, like what you said earlier, but where do we start to fix this? It's got to be tweaked.
Yeah, it's not going to be, I mean, I think, Brad, obviously it's not going to be overnight. And I think in the era of, everything's got to happen now, this is difficult. I think it's growth. If you're looking at, it's got to be a long-term plan, because again, everybody's waiting to pick up your top players and with a fire sale.
Yeah.
Because they know you're under pressure to win tomorrow. But I think the key component for me right now is the idea, and the NHL doesn't like to focus on this, but the idea that leadership capacity growth, right? Like not just pointing to the top, Matthews or Draisaitl, or not just your top guys, but throughout your team, you look at the influence that, and I think we've talked about this before, but the fourth line and the fifth line on teams during the playoffs have a lot of influence on the mindset of that dressing room. So it's not just saying, McDavid, we're going to send you to school. it's really having a look at the leadership capacity throughout your dressing room, throughout your, organization. And then, what we've been talking about is will, is resilience. Like, it's the stuff of pandemics, right? It's the stuff of COVID right now.
Yeah.
It's Brad, your point, people have to go through hard times to get better. And when you're in a place of fear, you can stay there or you can turn towards faith. And I think that's just read it a whole bunch more times, where the scripture says, do not fear.
Yeah.
Do not fear.
Yeah.
Do not fear. That's such an easy thing to say and such a hard thing to do.
Oh my gosh.
But it must be important. Like, the fear attitude brings in negativity, and it creates that Carol Dweck's idea, that fixed mindset, that I guess I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Instead of opening up right into that faith component that says, hey, we lost last year, we're going to get better, we're going to work harder, and we're going to make this work. So it's that simple. I think you have to get it down to something that the players can grasp. And I think the first move, though, is to make sure that management in both cities are solid, secure, and the coaching staff is solid and secure. Because if those two areas are afraid, then it'll rub off on the players.
It's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've always been, and Evan's probably sick over the years of hearing this over and over, but fish rot from the head. So if you've got a suspect ownership group, they may not hire all the best people. And that filters down from the guy who wrote the big check all the way down to the trainers and like everybody. And then what kind of the team you put on the ice. And if you have that stability, the faith, the confidence, the will, right from the top, then you've got an ownership the group that's going to hire like-minded people to run the ship for them. The last thing that a 21-year-old kid wants to see is his leadership, whether it's in the dressing room or in the up in the press box. They're in an absolute panic and an uproar. Nothing good can come from that. So that's it's a great point. And it brings me to another question for you. Last time you were on, we talked about your quadrant of player to from fan to player, from soft to hard. So you're back in that thing where, and having played in Montreal for so long, how much of that attitude when you were in Montreal, Ryan, that city and that ownership group, that whole place expected to win a Stanley Cup every single year.
Yeah.
How much of that affected you? How did it affect you? People talk about the pressure, but that's, no pressure, no diamonds, as the saying goes. So how did that affect that quadrant that you've put together, from soft to hard and from fan to player?
Yeah, you really have to. I think when you're under pressure, you learn a lot about yourself. And, I think I did coming to Montreal, as the headline in the Montreal Gazette said, worst trade in NHL history, so, so I learned a little bit about myself there, and I had to learn how to get out of that. Yeah. I think the other side, though, is with those expectations, you either learn how to win or you learn how to lose. Lots of guys came and went from Montreal, and Rick Green and I were fortunate to stay there pretty much through, the bulk of the 80s, and really learn from that group. We had the Robinsons and the Lafleurs and the Gainies and the Schutts and all of that. And so you learn from, the players on your team. But I think it still comes down to sort of a personal choice. And the quadrant, to go back to, where are we, from a north-south point of view, do we enter the building as a fan or do we enter the building as a player? And I love the concept because we use it a lot with corporate America, right? And that side of the quadrant is belief system and mindset. So how do we come into the season? How do we, I guess we would say, actually come into the game? So what's our belief system? What's our mindset? So that would be the place that, that we could say, okay, every player on either team, how was their preparation? How did they enter, to as a player to make it happen, to be accountable, or was it a place where they weren't ready to make, when the game's on the line, who wins the game? And then the soft hard is the east-west side. And the idea of soft is, we hate that word, but when the game's on the line, who competes?
Right.
So that's where a soft fan is obviously not the position that we want, ourselves or our people to be. But if we're up in that place we might call it a hard fan, right? Then we know we need to work on preparation, mindset, belief system. If we're in that place where we're a soft player, then we know we need to work on grit, right? And when the game's on the line, who shows up, and how you do those things as organizations is really interesting. How do you build that? How do you, how will your players respond? Some coaches take away ice time.
Yeah.
Right. Some coaches push buttons because they have to build the resilience of their player. And they want to know, when the game's on the line, will this guy play or will he not? So it becomes north-south, a fan player, east-west, soft hard. It becomes a simple sort of, we call it the four helmets of just looking at the players on your team. And I want to say this again. I said it last time. I want to be really careful about this quadrant, guys. I don't want us to personalize this. People, it's a point in time. Players on the Toronto Maple Leafs are not soft.
No.
They might have played soft in Game 7. I'm not here to judge them. It's in a point in time, and I think the beauty is the difference between where we are today and where we can be. And that's the growth of every person that's, listening in and watching in on what we're doing here, is we all get a chance to grow.
A tool for improvement.
100%.
Yeah. And so would you, going back to your quadrant, I was thinking about this last week, and not being, since fans can't physically go from being a fan to a player, is that more of the fan reference, is that more like someone who is kind of on the sidelines, doesn't have a big influence on the outcome? I mean, you might be a player, but if you're in that fan, north-south fan category kind of, or a little too much, maybe you figure yourself as not somebody having a big influence on the outcome. You want to win, but you're not so eager to jump over the boards when it's tied in the third period, right? Something like, is that what that gets to?
100%. And I think the idea is not that you're sitting in the stands. We're all participating. The idea is how did you come into the building, right? What was your preparation like?
Okay.
Did you come in a nonchalant, okay, I don't care, if we win or lose, it doesn't matter, I got paid anyway.
Right.
Right? That's the fan mentality. So on the north south, it's more about belief system and mindset. It's how we prepared to play the game.
Okay.
Players come in, and I think that maybe even a better way to look at it is a fan comes to work. Let's take it into corporate North America. A fan puts in the time, comes to work, gets paid, and can't wait to leave, can't wait to get home. The player comes to win. So it's not about the hours put in, it's about accomplishing the job, and that you're loyal for the time you're with the company. You're 100% loyal. You're a leader, you make things happen, right? You're the person that they're going to, take to the next level.
Well, that's really, that puts a different light on it for me. The fan comes to work to get his paycheck and go home at 5. The
Yep.
player comes to work to affect the outcome, to get the win, irrespective
Yes.
of what time of day it is or what happens on the 1st and the 15th.
And from a preparation point of view, Brad, just what you said can happen to any player in the world and any person in the world.
Yeah.
That's why we're just, you come to win, you come to work, fan, player. And that's, I just think it's an attitude versus a position. Everybody's on the team.
Right.
But what kind of focus, what kind of mindset, what kind of belief system do we bring? Do we come in the fan gate, the turnstile, or do we come in the player entrance?
Yeah.
Are we ready? Good
point. Yeah, that's really that's really illuminating. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I got to tell you too, before I forget, when I was listening to the Denzel Washington commencement address, he was talking about having something to fall back on, and he said, "I really don't like that term." And I thought of you immediately, because he said, "I always wanted to fall forward."
Yeah,
and
good.
I think one of your first books, you talked about failing forward. That we're all going to fail, but you fail forward. You fail executing something. It might not always work, but you fail trying. And so I thought about you when he said that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and John Maxwell, give him the credit. He wrote the book Failing Forward in the in the early '80s. But I love that concept, and it's a great one for life. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's hockey is life and life is hockey, and we the three of us love to look at the game, but it's really, every concept we talk about is really about, for all of us. I mean, this is about the game of life. When the game's when the game is on the ice, when the game's on the line, who participates? Who wants the puck? And I think that's a great life skill.
Absolutely. Like we all know that nobody wins every night. You have to come to the rink expecting to win. You walk in and you always believe that you're going to win every single time, no matter what. But it doesn't always work that way. So how do you respond to that? And we can't always choose or affect the outcome, but we can always choose the response. Eh?
Yeah, totally. And I love Viktor Frankl has a great thought there. He says, between stimulus and response is a space. Wow. Let me say that one more time. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose. And in that choice lies our growth and our freedom.
Wow.
And I think that what we do in leadership development and trying to help people grow and coaching and all of that is, I think that's what we do now is for ourselves and for others, we help people define and expand that space. Because in today's world, we don't want to react. We want to be more intentional. And that's, I think, great leaders in 2021 expand that space, right? So it's not just me reacting. It's me, I'm prepared to be intentional. And I just love that thought, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And that really defines our life, doesn't it?
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. What's that name again? Franco?
Yeah, the gentleman's name is Viktor Frankl, And
Frank.
he's a guy that everybody should read his books because he lived it. He came out of a German concentration camp and lived, but his family did not.
Oh,
And so he has put in the experience. He has the experience to talk about these issues. He's an amazing author.
maybe more so than anybody. Wow.
Yeah.
I've not heard of that. I'm going to look him up. That's a good reference.
Well, we're already winning in this meeting because $200 later and we have unlimited minutes. So we don't have a time limit anymore. I got a 10-minute notice on the thing, so I had to shell out 200 to go unlimited.
Evan, I'm telling you, we could go on for 52 days now, Evan.
So we are unlimited now, so we can keep going.
You are an unlimited guy, Ev. See? That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I got another one at the top of the hour, but I'm all yours then.
Well, before we click out here, do let us know if you guys want to include Ben or Joe or anybody on one of these someday.
Yes.
If that ever works into your program, or works for either one of them, as you said early on, up to both of them. But I know they both have a lot to say and great stories to tell about overcoming and things. So if that works, we're all game.
I've been thinking about Ben. It might be nice. Maybe what we do is, you guys are welcome to interview Ben on your own, but it might be nice for Ben and I to come on together.
Yes.
And just talk about his pro career and all that he learned. And I'll just be I'll join you and Evan and ask him questions. That'll be fun because he had such a great pro career and learned a lot. I mean, you talk about a guy going through the hard times. He had 8 years in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
And I think the American Hockey League is a harder league to play in than the NHL is because those guys are trying to beat up on you to get to the NHL, right?
Yeah.
Different style of game.
Anyway,
sure.
Yeah, it's
that would be great.
That would be fun. So we'll work to make that happen.
Yeah, when you talk about resilience and work ethic and the faith and the mentality and that whole, like, who comes through the door? Is it the turnstile or the players? And a guy who has had to struggle to make it and stay there, like Ben, has a much different and much more well-rounded, quality, hard look at that whole mentality than somebody who has, come out of the very first round and jumps right to the show and has all the leverage when payday comes. That makes for a whole lot better perspective for our listeners than anybody else. I'd love to have him on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that'd be fun. Yeah, it's been quite a year. I mean, I've said to Ben, as he's coaching the major midget program there in Nanaimo, I am so impressed with young coaches for what they've just been through. And we talked about this last time. Imagine the drills you've got to come up with, right? There's no games. It's all practice. Every day is a practice. And just to keep things fresh and to keep your players' mindset, on improving. And so I think it's going to be interesting to watch this generation grow up in light of the last year and a half that we've called COVID.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of, we're going to have to look back on this 5 years from now and see those kids that were midgets and junior eligible and trying to catch on and through the minor leagues and stuff that so many of which have been shut down and see what kind of results that bears in those kids in 5 years. Because a lot, mid 20s is a lot of times the telltale of development. So we're going to have to remember all that for sure. Yeah, I know you got to get going. Hey, you got another one coming?
Yeah, we do, but that's okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we can let you go. We appreciate you joining us again. And
thanks, Evan.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Well, we'll just keep up a conversation. We'll look forward to our next time. And
Yeah.
you guys, when you figure out the Oilers and the Leaf, will you send me an email?
Well,
We've been waiting for the phone to ring. I keep it charged, but it's just not, Daryl Cates and MLSE have not phoned me yet, but I'm sure they will soon.
They will soon. Totally.
absolutely.
You can give them the what for, Brad. So that's good.
Well, listen, thanks for joining us. Like Evan said, we'll have you on anytime, talk to Ben, and give our best to Jen and everybody, and we'll catch up with you again as soon as you have a chance.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. Evan, sorry you had to spend the $200, buddy. Maybe take it off your dad, okay? How's that?
I would hope so. This is our endeavor with the podcast. I would hope he would at least go in for half, but we'll
Yeah, perfect.
see how that goes. So
we'll work it out on the golf course.
yes.
See you guys.
Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye for now.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah, it was good. Good job,
conversation.
Good job. I think that's going to make a good recording. That's
good.
He's always very enlightening, very solid guy. Always liked him.
Well, thanks for joining yourself.
Yeah, thank you.